Are we doing it? Yes. The dots say we are doing it. The green dots at the bottom of my screen. Hello, VOD people, and welcome. So, I had another session of my Game Shop game, my 5th edition Game Shop game. 2014, I'm still a little iffy on 2024 stuff, but less iffy. I'm iffy, but I'm still like occasionally using stat blocks from it. I don't know. But the thing I actually want to talk about is how that session went, and then I'll talk about whatever I want to after that, including the best clickbait that I won't use. So we had the game. The group, last we left off, had just gotten to the first chamber of the second level of my big, massive dungeon, the mega dungeon that I am taking stuff from the Dungeon 25 challenge that I did and making them into actual levels. And this first room had a number, like 4 big buff dudes with like Anubis jackal style, like black and gold masks. And because the players had kind of engaged with them in conversation through the door first, and then the barbarian who had eaten part of the scorpion boss, the last room, and I had said, "Oh, doing that gives you acid breath, or not an acid breath, but like an acid spit for like the next 24 hours." And he spent his time puking up acid onto the door to like eat a hole in it. So the enemies had time to like warn other people and stuff. I had already put in the thing, oh, there'll be a lever, there'll be a rope, an alarm rope, and when they first get into that room, they'll have to like try to stop someone from that. Well, that went out the window. This is all last time. That went out the window because they took their time getting in and knocked and everything. And so when we picked up, we were in the middle of that fight, or not in the middle, towards the end, because they had already engaged, fought, they'd gotten a little jammed up at the door trying to get through because the door's not completely open. There's like a hole in it. Um, there was a point where the monk player tried, like, took hostage and threatened the life of the veteran guy because there were the 4 jackal dudes, and then there were 3 like young men with staves, and then there was one older man with like twin swords, who I'm gonna call a veteran, who was like I narrated him like giving advice and like guiding and otherwise encouraging the young ones. And there was a point where the monk player took that dude hostage session before last and basically threatened him, trying to get everybody to stand down, which I rolled for the young ones, and the young ones did stand down, but the jackal headed warriors in there were like, no, our oath is strong. And so then he decapitated the hostage he had, and then the fight continued. At the end of this fight, or towards the end of this fight, is where we picked up last Saturday. They fought, they beat. It was already on the players. It was already on the player spiral. They beat the rest of the dudes. And then the assassin, the snake assassin that I had forgotten, and then decided, oh, well, I'll just have him attack once everybody is done, and it will become world building instead of me having forgotten, because this level, the players don't know this, but this level actually is split into 2 different sects. A warrior sect that's like the Magi from the Mummy movies, and then a sect of snake men assassins. They've got like a snake tail and like the human body. They're basically embodiments of Apophis, like the Yu-Gi-Oh card, because that's what I do. And unbeknownst to the players, and probably unbeknownst to anybody unless they watch this, my players watch this, don't listen to this, but for everybody else, unbeknownst to the players, there's a whole community of the like warrior people, the not Magi people's family that's like in the middle that I decided to hide because of problems with this level. Originally, I thought it'd be really cool if there was a level in this dungeon that was just a bunch of Tombkeeper warrior motherfuckers, a bunch of Magi motherfuckers, and they're guarding this place, but they have this whole community down here, and it would be really emotionally fraught to have to deal with carving your way through that. But these people also are duty sworn. And hello, Potato Kingo. Welcome. I'm talking about a campaign that I'm running right now and stuff about it. Happy to have you here. So originally, I thought in this big pyramid dungeon, if there was one level that had a whole community of people who are like the Magi from the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie, that it would be cool, but it could also be emotionally fraught dealing with these people because they're not willing to talk, but because they're duty sworn to guard the rest of the dungeon, they're not willing to talk, but also, like, it's difficult because you're carving your way through a community that's just defending something. That was my original concept. While putting it together for actual play, I felt like that was too much, maybe even too much for me, because while it sounds interesting on paper, it's probably just going to translate, I felt, to the players trying to talk once, and then when that doesn't work, going, okay, I guess everyone dies. And I didn't want to run through that. So when I actually deployed it, I decided, well, okay. I said this was hack and slash light role play anyway, which I've had to remind myself multiple times when I go into little rabbit holes. I'm like, you told the players this is hack and slash light role play. Move this. Don't violate expectations unless you really have to. Because fair is fair. So when I deployed it, I was like, okay, that community is going to be hidden, and it's just going to be 2 tracks. One full of snake assassin guys that are basically like Lamia, like snake tail, human body. I said it's like the Yu-Gi-Oh card embodiment of Apophis. They're like snake dudes, they're assassins. And then the other track is just warriors. I'm still going to give those warriors like emotion and things, but like it'll be okay. It is still not super okay. Because in this session that just happened, they fought the initial dudes. Somebody took one of the warrior dudes hostage, trying to get the other warrior dudes to back down. It kind of worked, it kind of didn't. The session last Sunday, another dude who wasn't there for the initial entry to level 2, because this is all level 2, tried to. He basically kept on trying to like talk or intimidate or otherwise get people to like back down. And I gave him rolls sometimes because they won't back down completely, but you might be able to start something rolling. And it didn't work. And I felt bad because I think, one, I made the mistake of thinking these guys are cool, even though they're the enemies of the players. Two, the session before last, when they initially like tried talking to them like through the door, I don't think I did a good enough job of communicating that they're guardians here, but they also don't like the guy that they're guarding. Because in my dungeon, the sealed away pharaoh dude, they originally were serving, but now they don't like, but they're still supposed to protect the tomb, but it's more of a we're protecting it, but also keeping him from awakening kind of thing. And I think that could have been more interesting if I had been clearer when the players initially were talking, and I fumbled that. And I also felt bad because when players hit walls trying to like engage in different ways, I worry that that sends the wrong message. Most of the players that I have now have played more with me than this one dungeon. And they've talked to people in the past, and that has totally had like different results. I am the person who likes to play the characters in my game, the NPCs in my game, complexly, realistically, even though that's a loaded term, I will explain. In my game, if you are attacked by a bunch of bandits, depending on what their motivations are, if you lay down like some food and maybe a little bit of money and go, hey, you can get a little bit of food and money and leave, or you can rumble with us to take your chances. If they're like street hoodlums, they'll totally take that. No role required. If you're out in the wilderness and you've got like these hardcore swamp dwellers, no, they're ready to rumble. But also, when you try to reason with people and I have you roll, depending on the reasoning that you use, I'll also modify the roll and stuff. To me, that's really important. So I felt really bad when people were trying to be like, hey, warrior dudes, stand down. And they were like, we are sworn to protect this place, and you've already killed a bunch of us. No. I very much want to use naturalistic language, and one of my flaws as GM is I don't like stating things in plain rules text, but as a good GM you have to, because clarity is important to gameplay, though I resist it. But at the end of this session, I even went out of my way to say, hey, just so you know, I like your attempts to try to engage with these people, but it's going to be really difficult, especially after how many of them you've killed so far, to actually, talk to them. Like, there are 3 different levels of hurdle you have to clear now because, like, because of the situation, because of what's going on. And I think it got through. I hope it got through, but it still left me feeling a bit bummed. That's a unique thing that only a GM can do. Walk away from a session where people had fun and everything was fine, but go, I don't know, this could have been better. And it even has me thinking about this whole level in general. But on the other hand, I also don't want to immediately make it too easy to like talk them down or whatever, because that doesn't make sense. And there is a part of gameplay and like playing role playing games that is sometimes you don't succeed, or sometimes you try something and it's just not going to happen. Like, so I'm not about to go, oh, let's make it easy for them to talk to. Cause like, no, man, sometimes you don't accomplish stuff. Sometimes you don't get to do stuff. Sometimes it doesn't work. And that's part of the game. If the players never fail and if everything just unfolds in front of them super easily, one, it doesn't feel like a real world. 2, it's boring. 3, you can't get invested very easily. So I'm not about to change it, but there is a part of me that still feels a little bad about it. The second part of the session was them getting into a hallway where some other warriors are waiting for them, and they herded this group of rabid jackalwares at them. And then, when the rabid jackalwares engaged with the players in melee, the people who were at the back, the warriors at the back, there were 3 of them, had these bolas that they would throw to try to trap. They basically try to tie players to enemies, meaning those enemies would get advantage on biting the crap out of them, and they would have disadvantage on their attacks, basically restrained. In this level, there's also a group of people who, a long time ago, got infected by some jackalwares and then weaponized this curse. So, like, that's the story behind, like, the jackal enemies here. Jackal man enemies that are here. Because I thought that was a cool little detail. And it's a detail that at least one person has kind of picked up on. Though it did leave me thinking something that I tweeted about, only on Blue Sky, so I guess skeeted about, which was not a huge deal, but I think that where creatures are cool, and them being invulnerable to non-silver attacks is cool, but they're also, like, they're invulnerable to non-silver and non-magical attacks. And in D&D, that basically means the party needs to be level 2 or lower for that to make any difference. These characters are level 9. I fully expected this inclusion to be just flavor for them, but it had me thinking in general. I wish that like weaknesses and resistances were a little more of a thing in Dungeons and Dragons, and like I guess I could make them. You can do whatever you want after all. But like, I don't know, kind of a bummer. Some people got caught by bolas. The barbarian got tied to like a dude, to one of the rabid jackal wares. The paladin also did, but he's got this helmet that lets him teleport. He's really making good use of that. He immediately teleported out. The monk player continues to make use of his ability to like run on walls and shit. He got over the group of rabid biting jackal wares and plopped down like right behind enemy lines and has been engaging the back line of warriors that are throwing the bolas in the first place. So that's been cool. Between the rabid jackal wares and that first room I was describing, they also came to this hallway where there was a mural. This is kind of interesting, actually. They came to this mural. One side depicted more of the warrior dudes that they had seen working together to defeat some outside force. And the other part of the mural depicted the snake assassin dudes, men turning to snakes at the behest of this 5-headed snake that was poisoning them and stuff. And they even explored both hallways a little bit. The paladin player going off by himself and actually getting ambushed by 2 of the snake warriors who got him. I'm glad they're being effective. They're relatively simple. But so far, they've been hurting people and poisoning people, and it's been like a thing, which I like. In fact, I recently found myself thinking that I was overblowing hit points and armor class on enemies, which is a very easy trap to fall down. You feel like it's got to be really big, but it doesn't. And so I'm glad. This week this last session, I kind of scooted over, and it turned out for the better, which is good. So they finished up that circle room fight. They got to the mural. They looked at the mural. They explored both ways. They found the trap in one path. The warrior path had a pressure plate trap that made fire shoot out of some of the statues that lined one side. And then snake assassins came out of one of the pairs of statues that was on the other side. And then we left off with them in the middle of fighting the rabid jackal wares. It was kind of funny because I thought, oh, some people feel a little sympathetic towards the warriors. Maybe given 2 choices, they'll go, let's do the assassin route. We don't care as much about the snake assassin guys. Only for them to actually go, I don't like the idea of getting poisoned a bunch. Let's stay with the warriors. I found that kind of funny. I found that kind of interesting. Personally. And so the session ended with them going down that path, engaging with the rabid jackal wares who are losing themselves, and some of the warriors who are trying to sling bolas at them to tie them to each other, making it more difficult for them to get through. But they're probably going to get through that. And then there's a big organized strategic skirmish against a ton of dudes past that. Potato King is asking, do they have any poison resistance? I don't believe so. I know that one of them has a scroll or something of resistance to poison, and I know that the paladin has it on their spell list. I felt kind of dumb actually because when the paladin player, who's a relatively new person jumping in, asked about spells that are good, they mentioned this one spell that's resistance to poison. Is that good? And I said, kind of not really. And then I turned around and was like, what was they talking about? Poison's gonna come up a ton. That was dumb of me. I owe that guy an apology. But no, I don't think they have any resistance to poison currently. So maybe it makes sense. Maybe it makes sense to be okay, let's not deal with poison. Let's just deal with tons of dudes. who get stronger and deal more damage as they see their fellows fall. But that hasn't stuck out too much to them, I don't think, so far, which is something else, I guess, to consider with the construction of the whole thing. If they had some poison resistance, maybe they would have been more keen to take on the assassins. I don't know, and perhaps I never will. But we'll see. We'll see about that. Next session, if they keep going, they're going to run into this big group of organized warriors, which is just all of the rest of them who like are formed up in a room, and I have extensive notes on people and like moving in and out of cover and throwing ranged weapons and things like that. So that's going to be a huge deal. Bunch of dudes. And then who knows? Maybe they'll turn around and do the other side anyway. Or maybe they won't. The first dungeon level, they didn't go back and hit the rooms that they didn't hit before, so maybe they're not that completionist. I don't know. But I found out I'm not that completionist, I guess, because I am in a game of Shadow Dark, and we are in the Temple of Elemental Evil, and we've found out recently there's like some stuff we missed that's like plot important, like as far as the cult is concerned, and I was like, oh damn. But even worse, the GM said that we've missed treasure along the way. Unforgivable. I thought I was good at this. There's no reason I thought I was good at this. I thought I was good at this, damn it. That's the campaign that I'm in. It's okay. Campaign that I am running, there will be more veteran warriors, more jackal warriors, a boss fight at the end of that track, because each track has its own boss. It'll be fun, or it should be fun. I felt a little bad about what I talked about. Like, yeah, it's okay. That's the campaign diary portion. Instead of being good at clickbait, I am instead going to be bad at clickbait. I'm going to continue talking about stuff, but I suppose I will ask, Potato King Go, are you in any campaigns right now? Or in any games right now? Just out of curiosity. While you answer that, or maybe not answer that, I will also say another thing that I want to talk about is the thing that I put like in my title. I believe that I am sitting on. I like the idea of making videos, but I just don't sit down and do it. And I believe I'm sitting on a great piece of the best clickbait that I won't use. And that is, I think you could make a video about how the problem with your campaign is that you're playing with your friends. And if people saw it, they'd be like, okay, what the fuck are you talking about? And it's basically this. I have been thinking lately about how when you turn to your friends and you say, I'm going to run D&D, do people want to play? There are definitely people who are really interested and go, hell yeah. But I also bet there are people who are like, sure. And maybe if you're really unlucky, maybe one person who internally goes, no, but I'll just do it, because everyone else is doing it. And no games, Potato King Go. Okay, that's fine. In fact, I'd say that's common. I am uniquely lucky, I think, with the amount of game that I get. So that's a bummer, but perhaps at some point or someplace. Though you could technically call the Robin Goblin stuff a campaign. Like, that's not the same thing, so that wasn't the question I was asking. But I suppose if you want to be cheeky, you could be like, yeah, kind of. That's a bummer, but sometimes that's how it be. So my clickbait video would just be me talking about how when you ask your friends, hey, do you want to play D&D? Some of them will inevitably not be that interested, but say sure, because that's just, That's just what you do. Everyone else is doing it, sure, why not? And when you're running a campaign, not just, oh, we're going to roll dice and laugh and whatever happens, happens, but like an actual campaign where you're really trying to do something, it's a problem if some people just don't care that much and aren't that invested. Running a campaign, it's important for the investment to be a two-way street. There are tons of people online who ask, how can I make my players care? And there are ways that you can, I've heard people talk about ways that you could do this, but I'm somewhat defeatist in that I think that while you can, I bet those things work. I don't think it'll actually get someone in who wasn't in to begin with. And I think when you just ask your friends who wants to play D&D, there's some amount of social pressure that guarantees you're going to end up with people who are not that interested, but just saying yes to go along with it. And I would argue in this theoretical clickbait video that that hurts the ability to run a campaign because you're dragging a certain amount of it yourself because of people who aren't that interested. And that's it. The tagline is really the thing that would get me the clicks, because people are like, playing with your friends is bad. And it's like, well, you could you could make the argument, and in the video I kind of do. Though of course it would also be ridiculous, because like, I mean, if you don't turn to your friends first, who do you turn to? Strangers? I don't know. It's partially motivated by the fact that I've had success, though it was difficult at first, getting people together for the game that I was talking about earlier. The game with the Jackal people and stuff is my local game shop game, and I like all the people, and I would call us friends, but they're people who just responded to a flyer or like me reaching out. They were people who went out of their way to play, and I've thought often about how, this group is really great. They show up consistently, they're attentive, they participate. Like, I really feel like the group is great. And there's a part of me that feels like that's because they all want to be here. It's ridiculous, the idea that you would have to like impose a test who truly wants to play Dungeons and Dragons. Like, that's absurd, right? But at the same time, I think it's actually a real thing, not the test part, but like, if you want to be there, you're going to be a better player and you're going to be more engaged and things are going to be better overall than if you're not. My main group of friends that I have known since high school, or most of them since high school or around that time, we play games, we have fun. The game's not bad, but they're definitely not invested in the same way. They're not as attentive, at least not all of them. And that thinking about, oh, if you ask your friends to play, that actually has an underlying problem, my thinking comes from there. The group that I deal with that's the most invested and interested and engaged right now is a group of people who had to go out of their way to play, versus people who one person says, I'm running a game, do you want to do it? And everyone else says, yeah, sure. There are some potential holes in this. My friend group plays online, and the game shop group plays in person. And like, that's a big deal in and of itself. It's just less distracting playing in person than online. You're not in other windows doing other things. But I still feel like the fact that they all want to be there, just kinda, definitely has something to do with it. And I think that I could make a video out of that if I, sat down and actually did it. I have ideas that could make good videos, but I'm not excited to make them, and that means it doesn't happen. Like, it's not even necessarily, oh, I'm lazy. Like, no, it's just, to make something, I need to be excited about it. Or I need to have enough momentum on it that I need to or have to carry through. And that typically doesn't happen with, you know, It doesn't happen with the video ideas that I say. So I just come here and say them. And, maybe I've toyed around with the idea of taking the VODs of this or whatever, and then like editing them and trying to make videos out of them. And maybe I'll do that. But editing, and no one likes editing. So that'd be even harder. Last week I tried streaming video games. I tried streaming Baldur's Gate 3 on Twitch. It was super laggy, would not do it, which was a bummer. I had this whole reason why I wanted to do it. Like, I want to experiment with streaming games, and I still will. But I recently thought, okay, I'm motivated to see the Dark Urge stuff that I didn't see the first time that I played the game, or the second or third times where I started a new campaign and didn't make it all the way through. I want to see that, and I have a story reason that has to do with my animated series, Treasure Takers. There are 3 episodes out on this channel, by the way. If you don't know, now you know. At time of recording, anyway. And I was like, oh man, I have this big motivation to do this, and then it just wouldn't work. But even worse than that, like I tried running it once I had turned OBS off. My computer won't run Baldur's Gate 3. Like, it lags super hard, and I've turned all the settings down, all the visual settings down to the lowest they would go, and it's still stuttering. And I tried a couple other things that didn't work, and it kind of sucks because I kind of wanted to do that. And that's me talking about that. I kind of wanted to do that. I can't play Baldur's Gate 3 at all on my computer now for some reason, which blows, but I'll deal with it, I guess. I'll deal with it. I also recently, not super recently actually, so there's a thing that I'm working on. Once upon a time, I saw a video about the 5-room dungeon, which is this concept of a short but hopefully satisfying dungeon where each room is like a different tenant or a different thing. Like there's a guardian that like guards the entrance to the said dungeon, and then there's like a puzzle or role-playing opportunity in the next room, and then there's a setback of some kind in the next room, a boss in the next room, and then the reward, whatever that would be for this dungeon, in the final room. 5-room, my hand's off screen, 5-room dungeon. And the video also said, oh, we're going to do a 5-room dungeon jam, me and a bunch of other people, if you want to join in, random people who watch, as long as you have YouTube videos and make YouTube content. And I said, I like dungeons, sure. And then I got into the Discord for that and didn't participate with the Discord because I'm terrible at interacting with community. Like, very bad. It's very difficult for me to like get off my ass and like talk with people online. A little bit in person too, but online. But I was like, oh, I'm going to make my own 5-room dungeon. I'm going to participate in this jam. And I did so, but I made the 5-room dungeon too late, so I just resigned in shame. And by resigned in shame, I mean I made the thing. At the time, I was interested in making like a video choose your own adventure kind of thing with like the chapter selects. So if you look on my channel, The Hand of Midas, my 5-room dungeon video where you can click different chapter times and play through it like a choose your own adventure video game with a little bit of extra rolling, it's on my channel. You can go see it. I made it for that thing. I just finished it late, so I didn't put it in I didn't throw my hat into the ring. Well, they're doing another 5-room dungeon jam this year, and I have decided to go way off the rails, but only because it's an idea that I'm excited about. Not too long ago, I saw a different game jam, a Shadow Dark game jam, where they give you 3 retro video games as inspiration, and then you make a dungeon based off of them. one of the sample inspiration pictures that they had up was like, this is what you could possibly get. Got me really excited and inspired me for a new variation on my Ninja Castle. I have a Ninja Castle dungeon that I made once. I've used it for Robin Goblin. I have used it for my game shop group, but I always felt like it wasn't good enough. It wasn't ninja enough. And for anybody watching who's like done the Robin Goblin stuff, or even if you go back and look through the Moonlit Castle, not a lot of ninja in that Ninja Castle, is there? Would you even know it was supposed to be a ninja castle if I didn't tell you? Maybe. I don't know. But I am constantly thinking about ways that I want to revise and return back to that. And I recently got inspired by the Shadow Dark Retro Game Jam that I did not enter to make something for the new 5-room Dungeon Jam that I am going to enter. In that, the inspiration that I saw that really inspired me, the games were Mega Man 2, Ninja Gaiden 2, and then Castlevania Simon's Quest. The Simon's Quest part didn't inspire me so much as the Mega Man and Ninja Gaiden ones did. So right now, I am working on 6 interlocked one-shots. Each one is a 5-room dungeon where you deal with a different section of a ninja castle, ending with a ninja master. There are 5 ninja masters: the master of fire, the master of poison, the master of blades, the master of hands, and the master of illusions. And each one shot is dealing with their section of the castle and fighting that master at the end, and then taking their cool ninja master weapon and using that ninja master weapon to fight the other ninja masters. It sounded cool to me and exciting. And even better, I was thinking it would be really cool if I could actually get this play tested before I submitted it. Just last Sunday, when my main friend group got together, the dude who was GMing stuff was like, I want to rethink some system stuff for the game that I was running, and I want to do this other thing, but also take a bit of a break, kind of. And then I slipped up and said, I have a 6-session long thing that is also Japanese based, because he was like, I've been playing Nioh 3 lately and I really like it. I want to do like a Japanese thing and I want to change what I'm doing. And I stepped in and was like, I would also like to change what I was doing to something Japanese, but it's like a 6-session Shadow Dark thing, fighting ninja masters and getting their cool ninja weapons. And people were receptive. Shadow Dark has shadowdarklings.net, which is like this character generator, and that was really useful because I posted it in the Discord after I talked about after the main GM guy was like, yeah, sure, that sounds cool, and other people were like, yeah, sure, that sounds cool. I posted the character generator, and people spent however long just like rolling new characters and looking through stuff, and I was talking a little bit about how Shadow Dark works. That was great. I'm excited to make this thing. I have been making it, actually, as of this stream. I have rough drafts of all 5 of the Ninja Master levels, and I have like semi-finished drafts of like 4 of them. And I've also started making maps and getting the Foundry thing together because we play online. My main friend group, as I said, plays online. But that's been really cool and really fun. I'm excited to make that. I'm less excited about getting it like formatted into 5 or 6 different PDFs. But like, I don't know, that's part of putting stuff out. I want to put written stuff out more and publish stuff out more. So this will be good practice. And even better, it will be play tested. So I'll be able to say, hey, players have played this and I've revised it even a little. I currently plan to bunch of birds flew by my window. I currently plan to play test it with my main group, and then I may also go to my game shop group and say, hey, um, do you mind if we switch for a little bit? Do you want to help me play test this thing for a game jam I'm doing for the next month and a half? And they'll probably say yes. But even if they don't, like even just having one group like play test through it would still be phenomenal. And that is like a big thing that I'm working on right now. Getting the 5 Ninja Master levels, 5, each one a 5-room dungeon in and of itself, together, along with loot tables and specific details. And then I think each week after I've run one of them, I will then put it into Scribus because I use free stuff. Fuck you. Which is a self-publishing software that's free, and put stuff together. I don't have a ton of time, but I'll probably try to make like a cover. I'll probably try to make cover art for each Ninja Castle section, and that should be cool and fun. I'm having fun writing that stuff down, solidifying that stuff. I like making dungeons. I wish I could make money doing it somehow, and who knows, maybe. Be a lot better than like a normal job, I'll tell you that. Even with the tumultuousness. Now for something much more stable, indie animation. Yeah, I'm kidding around. I just have this huge addiction to things that are difficult and don't make money, but are exciting to me. That sucks. Maybe some of you know, maybe some of you don't. I have my own animated dungeon crawling series, Treasure Takers, that I work on, which is 4-person Indiana Jones with a dash of Pawn Stars at the end. And I recently hit a milestone on that. I'd already put together a large part of the next episode, episode 4, but I was doing storyboards for a significant action scene that happens at the end of this episode, and the first significant action scene that I've done in the series. And I got kind of in the weeds on that. I think like storyboarding, I go too detailed. Like I'm also slow at drawing in the first place, but I got kind of in the weeds on it, and recently reassessed, blasted through. I got to the point where I finished the boards and I've actually started animating the damn thing. Fight scene. I posted on my community tab, but like the fight scene is like over an hour. Or not over an hour. God, I couldn't do that. It's over a minute, which is brutal. Like even like 4 or 5 seconds of animation takes me like a few days. So it has me nervous. But I'm gonna do my best on that. So I got a ton of stuff going on. I got more of the desert dungeon. I got like the Ninja Castle stuff I'm revising, and I also have more progress pushing ahead with Treasure Takers. So stuff's cool. Like I'm working on a bunch of stuff. And that's me. In addition to thinking sometimes, oh man, what if I tried harder to make content? And then I'm like, but I'm already making stuff. And it's tough. I mean, it's weird. Difficult? I don't know. And then, of course, I got the Robin Goblin stuff that I put out Monday, just looking. Okay, fine. And then I got the Robin Goblin stuff that I put out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So a new one will be coming out tomorrow. Robin the Goblin has had a couple of his party members turned to stone by an angry but influential archmage who has taken them as prizes to his tower. And now Robin, with the party members that he still has with him, are going to infiltrate that tower carefully, I hope, and try to get them back. Should be fun. Should be dangerous. The votes for this one are leaning pretty hard in one direction, which happens sometimes. So I'm gonna actually count the votes that I got, but I'm pretty sure I know which one is going to win. So I've already been thinking about exactly what I need to draw because I know what's ahead, and I'm pretty sure I know what's going to happen. Should be a fun time, I think. Riveting. That is it for the stuff that I wanted to talk about, but I usually hang out for like at least an hour. So I'm still chilling. Uh, is there It's be a good time for any like questions or anything about whatever, because I'm just chilling out. Burning questions. Anybody? Could be about the Robin Goblin stuff. Could be about the other stuff I talked about. I'm here. Ask me anything for approximately the next, let's say 15 minutes. Unless I get like really off on a tangent or a topic of some kind. Which sometimes I do. Just this time, I don't have like a ton of stuff to say outside of I'm working on stuff and the campaign diary, but not a ton happened. I mean, a decent amount happened, but I don't know. Not a ton of ground covered. Which I think was part of, uh, which I think plays into why I thought it was good to scale back on hit points and armor class. You get kind of, if you're me, you can fall into the trap of going too hard. Not too hard, but like too much. People complain about how fights in 5th edition drag on forever. And I think that wouldn't be as much of a problem if it weren't for a few core issues. But I think a big one is people really pump up the armor class and hit points of monsters just so they'll like live longer. And actually, I think one of the biggest problems, this is something I could genuinely make a video on too. But in short, in 5th edition, I think one of the biggest problems with, combat takes forever, is people think, and reasonably so, that every fight needs to be the big worth the price of admission fight. And yeah, no wonder they take so long. Every fight needs to be a big cinematic fight. Every fight needs to be equal in strength to the party or greater. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work narratively, because then when you're skulking through a castle and the rogue gets caught by a couple of guards, the guards have to become mega guards. That doesn't make any sense. When Indiana Jones gets caught by like Nazis that he's trying to sneak around the backs of, he knocks him out like one punch. Unless it's a significant amount of them, and then it's worth a sequence. So narratively, it doesn't make sense. System-wise, it doesn't make sense. 2 guards that catch the party sneaking around now have to be strong enough to fight all of the party. That's stupid. And once upon a time, when I was thinking that way, I also found myself trying to avoid combat because I didn't want it to be the only thing we do this session, even when it would logically be what happened. Well, the elves caught them sneaking through their forest, and the elves asked them what they were doing, and they told the elves to fuck off. The elves would probably attack at this point, but I don't want it to be the only thing that happens today. And that is what happens when you assume every fight needs to be equal or greater in strength than the party, but they shouldn't. And one of the aspects of that is, what I was talking about with giving enemies too much health and too much armor class. Why are you doing that? Because I want them to last. They don't need to last that long. In fact, the typical fight, and I only really got this because I read an article from the Alexandrian famous tabletop blog. Guy's a little uncool in some aspects, but his blog is noteworthy for a reason. And he had this blog talking about how a majority of the fights, like 60% of the fights that your players engage in, should be weaker than them. And he probably said this, but I'm going to say this, those fights should be interesting in other ways. And that transformed like my whole way of running. After reading that article, I immediately ran a session where I took that advice and I deliberately scaled the fights so that they were weaker than the party unless it made sense for them not to be. Like when they were in this jungle temple basically, and when they encountered like just roving guards or patrols, they had strategies and they had a little something to them. They weren't like nothing. They were engaging in other ways, but the players usually got through them in like 1 or 2 rounds, and that's fine. That's fine. Like something that I find myself saying a lot these days to myself and to other people is as a GM, you will have many chances to challenge the party. And also, sometimes some encounters don't need to. If a bunch of if a group of warriors in this jungle temple find the players skulking around and they engage in basic tactics where one of them has magic staff and hurls like fireballs, not literal fireballs, but like little bolts of flame from the back, while the other big dudes or the warriors try to block the way so that people can't get past them. Even if the players only have to think for a minute, okay, some of the ranged people should fire at that guy in the back, and the fighter types should try to carve through the people in the front. Even if you only thought for a little bit, you still thought for a little bit. You were still engaged. And if the fight ends in like a round or two, that's fine. It's especially fine considering the other part of the equation, the adventuring day. There are some people who roll their eyes at the idea that, oh, because somewhere in the rulebook it says for 5th edition that they expect players, to deal with between 6 to 8 combat encounters per adventuring day, ignoring everything else they're going to do that day. And people go, well, how can you do that? Because a fight takes like 3 hours, and like, how do you do that? And the answers are twofold. The first is what I've been talking about all along, or recently. Not every fight should be a knockdown, drag out, party, end risking fight. Most fights, majority, 60% of the fights should be enemies that the players will deal with relatively quickly, but are engaging through other means, a unique use of terrain, a little strategy that they pull off that the player has to like kind of see through or think about a little bit, stuff like that. But the other half is that the adventuring day does not equal one session, which I think is a big thing. Like, there's a famous quote by Gary Gygax about how you can't have a meaningful campaign unless strict time records are kept. He's also the same guy who said, hey, you're an idiot if you leave anybody alive, kill all your enemies. So you can't take him seriously about everything. But I think keeping track of time is really vital in 5th edition especially. Because if you keep track of time, you find that this whole 6 to 8 combat encounters over the course of an adventuring day, along with my first bit about how not every encounter should be equal in strength to the party and a majority of them should be less, like 60% should be less, really starts to make sense. In one session, let's say your players go to town. They try to get an inn, so there's a little bit of role playing that happens there. They go to the bar. There's a little bit of role playing at the bar. They get into a fight. A bar fight breaks out. It's just like a fun brawl kind of thing. Then later, they talk to like this guy who has the lead on the quest that they're trying to do, that's one session. But if you think about how much time in game has passed, how long did it take them to like have that hilarious conversation trying to get an in room? Probably like 10 minutes. How long did it take for them to like go to the bar and like mingle and do whatever role playing they did there? Maybe like 30, let's say 20, 30, let's say 30 minutes. Because there's a little bit of space between like finding a chair, ordering drinks, waiting, whatever. The bar fight takes basically no time at all. If you're thinking like one round of combat is 6 seconds, how long did the bar fight take? Trivial. Let's not even count it. So like 10 minutes for the in talk, 30 minutes hanging out at the bar. You have a talk with the guy who's like the quest lead you were looking for. Let's say the conversation takes 10 minutes. Okay. That's 50 minutes. We could even round up and say an hour. That's one session of real time, but it's less than an hour of game time. People make fun of D&D being 20 minutes of fun packed into 4 hours, and I think we should take that energy and we should really apply it to the adventuring day. And once you start measuring time roughly, you don't have to be exact. You can do it in segments of 10 minutes, an hour, whatever. But once you start keeping track like that, I think a lot of problems click into place. Fights don't take as long because you're not throwing fights that are like the closer in strength to the party a fight is, the longer it's going to take to resolve because they have more hit points and tricks, the same as the players do. If your fight is just some goblins, but they're on top of a cliff and they're like retreating into bushes for cover, you're going to take care of that in a couple rounds, but it's not going to take very long. It's not going to take very long. It's still engaging. That was my whole point about the earlier stuff. And if you have a bunch of those fights, and then you have the occasional fights that are tougher or stronger, where it makes sense, the whole thing like starts to balance out. Especially when you think about how people aren't long resting between everything. You're not allowed to long rest more than once in a 12-hour period. But I think everybody just kind of ignores that and goes, you can long rest, sure, whatever. Players ask, did we long rest? And then some people just go, okay. By the way, I saw someone liked this video. Thank you very much, whoever you are. As I was saying, I think that sucks that people just kind of go, yeah, sure, because then people are coming in at full health, full resources, full spell slots, full everything, and then they just nuke whatever you throw. And so you fall even further into the temptation of cranking up AC, cranking up armor class, cranking up hit points, bolting like 20 abilities to your enemies so that they'll stick around for long enough for it to feel it mattered. And you don't have, and then the fight takes like 20 years to complete. And you don't have to do that. Potato King Go says, if we don't remember having a long rest, our DM says, no, we did not have a long rest. Good luck. I think that's the way to go. At least a little bit. If you're tracking time, and if you know that you only get to long rest once a day, you will immediately have more challenge for your players, and the fights will take less time. Because it will be like 3 or 4 sessions, and people will be like, have we long rested? And you'll go, no, actually. In game, it's been like 5 hours. You've got 7 more before you can short rest. You can short rest if you want. People will be more strategic with the use of their spells. And when you throw big fights, they don't need to be overhyped and overblown because they've had a bunch of smaller fights that have worn down their resources. I hate to say it dryly like that because I am some weird fey creature that, but at the same time, it is true. And I think in good stories, it's also true. There are plenty of stories where we follow a protagonist who goes through a bunch of challenges and then they enter into the final battle at a disadvantage. And that's exciting. And I think that's precisely what is missing from a lot of people's games who say it's difficult to challenge my players. And I honestly believe that, hey, if it's difficult to challenge your players, what you should do is you should tell your players, I'm going to keep track of time. Spoilers, you only get to long rest once a day. So remember that. And then keep track of time in just general cuts of like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. And then over the course of however many sessions, they will use their spells, they'll use their healing, or they'll save them, which makes the fights that they do go through harder because they're saving up for the boss or whatever. And just like that, it is way easier to challenge people. You can do it without cranking up the bosses super high and having them take forever. And thus, you have, in my opinion, a much healthier and much more logical and even, I'll say it, satisfying role playing ecosystem. Fights don't take forever, but they don't have to. They're impactful in other ways. The slow burn on people's resources means that when you do get to a boss, they don't need 5 million legendary resistances and 80,000 health for the players to even feel anything. But people don't know. Or someone says something about the adventuring day and they go, shut up. Because there are some people that just really, even more than me, like really don't like hearing about it. Like I was watching a video once, and the video was good and cool, but it was so ridiculous. Because it was a video by some guy, more successful and popular than I'll ever be, probably, who was talking about like ways to buff martial characters, and he had made this series of videos talking about all these different unique systems and buffs that he puts into the game. And uh, there was a point where he briefly references the thing about like encounters per adventuring day and stuff. And he honestly says, "Oh, but I have to put in a bunch of filler encounters. That's a bunch of extra work. I don't want to do extra work." And then without like, presumably without any amount of self-awareness, turns and goes, now back to my, he doesn't literally say, now back to my 5-part series of like 20 different custom systems that I did extra work making to do this. But the video would be funnier if he did. Actually, no, it wouldn't. The video's fine as is. But like, in that instance, it was worse than someone going, shut up, nerd, as sometimes people do about this stuff. Just straight up going, no, what you're talking about is extra work. Now, excuse me while I do extra work to make this game the way that I want it to be. But clearly, in that case, the dude is more interested in making fun custom systems for martial characters than they are in just running the game in a way that would make it work better. And I mean, you got to do what you're interested in. So it's not even like a problem. I just found it kind of silly. Ugh, extra work? I guess we're just going to ignore all the extra work I'm doing right now. But that's extra work is silly. It was silly. It was silly. Unlike some of the stuff that he was talking about. I was like, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I'll ramble for a little longer. I recently put up a short because it was something else that I've been thinking about, and it's on my channel even. It was a YouTube short where I basically talked about how I think that the reason why people call fighters boring is because the fighter's specialty, fighting, is something that's not special in 5th edition. Every like you fight, everyone fights, and I think, there are things you could say about the like martial caster divide, which are separate from this. Just straight up calling fighters boring, I think, is in part due to the fact that the thing they specialize in is something that everybody gets. But the thing that I'm going to blather on for a little bit about right now is good old fashioned comment complaining, because I got at least a couple of people who focused on the part of the short where I said just knowing how to use more than one weapon is crazy if you think about it. And wizards, a class who should not be able to use any weapons, shouldn't be proficient with any weapons, get proficiency with like 5 different weapons. And the example, like I was using it as an example of like, it's crazy how much we give every other character for free that diminishes what would, in theory, make the fighters special. And I got a couple people focusing on that, going, well, just because they're proficient with it doesn't mean they're good with it, which is some crazy amount of mental acrobatics that you're doing there. There was one guy in the comments who agreed with me, so I will valorize them. I don't even know it was a guy. There's one commenter who agreed with me, so naturally I must put them on a pedestal, who said basically what I would have said. By the rules, that's not true. Like, if both a fighter and a wizard have equal stats, and both of them are proficient with a weapon, they're both equally good with it. Like, the idea that, oh, well, a fighter is inherently better, like, that might be fluff. That might be in universe true, but as far as the game system is concerned, it's not. Which is, you know, part of my point. And again, amazing cope trying to say, well, just because they're both proficient with daggers doesn't mean they're both equally good with them. Dude, what are you talking about, man? What are you talking about? Even if you want to pretend that that's true, like game system wise, it's not true. Though my real point was, hey, fighting is something that everybody gets to do for free. The fighter is supposed to be specialized in fighting, and they basically don't have anything that shows for that, system wise. Though in this case, I think D&D would have to make everybody bad at fighting except for the fighter, at least in the straight melee sense or the straight weapons sense, the straight martial sense. And obviously, they're not going to do that. And honestly, I think it'd be kind of a drag if they did. Like, in theory, you could say, well, fighters get action surge, and that's what makes them good at fighting. But, like, I think one feature can't compensate for, like, the evocative feel that we have from other classes that are represented by their whole thing. If you're a druid, you're not just a druid because you can wild shape. You're a druid because you can wild shape, and you also get a bunch of nature-themed spells. You know? You don't feel like a wizard just because you know about magic. You feel like a wizard because like you have magic and you're the best at magic. Your spell selection is the biggest out of any of them. You can copy off of scrolls into your spell book. No one else gets to do that. You have things that make you wizard, makes you more magic than other people. As opposed to fighters, like what makes you more fighter? One class feature, which if you're multi-classing, you can just take. You can't do that you can't have the same spell selection of a wizard if you just take a 2-level dip into wizard. Though I'm not gonna lie, I don't forbid them at my own table, but I am starting to think that, or I do think that there's something to not letting people multi-class. Not letting people reach into someone else's thing and go, I can do it too. Even if it's just a little. But 5th edition is not good about niche protection, which is a bummer. But I think that most games aren't good about niche protection. Can you imagine feeling special because of what you're playing? Can you imagine being truly valuable and irreplaceable just because of the class you're playing? Man, imagine, right? Imagine. Okay. I think that that is going to do it for me, unless there's any really important business. So, unless there's anything else, I think I'm going to stop for now. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see y'all next time next week, unless something happens. There we are. Take care. Take care.